Good morning, friends. It is lovely to be here this morning with you all. I'm going to take our time this morning This is Journey Home Meditation, and you are witnessing, participating with the morning sit. We're going to do some breath work together. We'll have some contemplation, and we'll get into some poetry today. I really want to get into Bell Hook's Appalachian Elegy again to see where she's taking us through place. So I'm Michael. I'm going to be facilitating this morning, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to be doing this all alone. I'd like you to participate as well. So wherever you're witnessing this, there is probably a chat feature, whether it's through the Substack, which I recommend if you're not on the Substack, checking us out at substack.com. That's journeyhomemeditation.substack.com, I believe. Will bring you to our live page there. Or you might be on our YouTube channel or on one of our various Facebook outlets. Wherever you are joining us, there's probably a chat feature. And I don't know if I will see your chats or not because I only have access to a couple of them at a time. But utilizing that is a way to engage with others that are also participating. And we can start to build a conversation from what would otherwise be a soliloquy in the Elizabethan parlance. Is that the word? I don't know. But I'm happy to be here today, and I'm happy to share this space with you. So let's take a few moments to begin settling into our breath. And let's allow that breath to bring us an awareness of our physical body, our emotional body, our mental, psychological body, our spirit body. All of these layers and planes of existence of our consciousness. The beginning of the Yoga Sutras by Patanjali is, and now there is yoga. It's this recognition that now we come to the union. So I'll ring the bell. And we can just settle into a few breaths. The union. As we begin with this pause for breath, we want to just simply bring our attention to the breath, bring our awareness to how it is we are breathing. That's the quality of the breath. Are we breathing in through the nose or through the mouth? Are we going into the belly, enlarging our abdomen and softening ourselves to the world? Are we having difficulty with an entire exhale or with a smooth inhale? Let's see where we are right now. The simple act of bringing awareness to the breath in the body is just a way of noticing what I may not be conscious of. Just sort of allows those quiet voices to be heard, inviting stillness and silence. And then we can make small adjustments to facilitate that breath. This is a devotional practice to breath. When it comes down to, that's pretty much it. The way that we apply our ideas, our beliefs, our thoughts, our methods, that's all something else altogether. But just spending a few moments with the breath can really be enough. So breathing in through the nose, enlarging the belly as the diaphragm pulls downward, bringing the world really into our lungs. And then allowing the body to release as it contracts, pushing everything out. I often open these sits with that discussion, those talking points about the breath and about our stories. And you might hear me say that it's a method, and that might sound dismissive to someone. I say, all methods can become traps. These are just methods. But it's not dismissive. I don't intend it to be dismissive. I intend it to be just more descriptive. I just want to be honest about what it is we're approaching, because I think that many of us have been sort of molded around this notion of expertise, of someone who has knowledge or an absolute understanding of something, and because of that, we think that any information that we receive that we didn't have an understanding of necessarily before, or didn't have words for the understanding at least, must be coming from some expert, and I don't think that that's always beneficial. Of course, there are times when people who have more expertise are turned to and given that respect. We have teachers. Many of us have teachers. All of us should have teachers, really. Those beings that are opening the doorway for us to find our levels of truth and understanding. But experts are important as well. You can talk about how much you don't trust the experts until your toilet is broken. You're going to call a plumber. And there's all this distrust, which I understand these days for medical professionals or whatnot. And it's not really a distrust of the person. It's a distrust of a system that's been put into place that so often fails us, because systems rely upon consistency, and across the spectrum of human existence, we don't really have too much of that. We have a lot of things in common. There are a lot of things, especially in the medical aspect, in the biological aspect. We all have bodies, and those bodies, they have very similar things happening. And so there are people who become experts in certain aspects of the health around that. But it's difficult when there are all these other factors for there to be sort of this system in place that serves everyone equally. So we become distrustful, but I think it's important that we step back and remember, this person has studied these things. I want to hear their perspective. People say, well, I want a second opinion. Okay, good. Get as many perspectives as you can, but keep in mind that we are not functioning on opinions when it comes to these things. We want to look for someone who has an understanding. And understanding leads to perspective. And there's also the second element of that, which is intention. And when we have systems in place whose intention is profit, that's going to leave out a lot of openings for us to have relationship. So there's a lot of distrust, and I understand that. But I think it's also important that we begin to apply those levels of distrust in other ways as well. I think distrust can be healthy in some cases. Because if distrust leads to a deepening of a relationship, then that trust that will be made, that will be built, will be much stronger. And I'm not suggesting that we start from a place of distrust. I personally love coming from a place of trust. I want to trust people. I want to trust that people are doing the best they can with what they have in any moment. I want to trust that the intentions of the interaction is not to cause harm, but to meet a need. Now, the way that each of us meet our needs, that's something to be discussed. Because I think that many of us have learned very unhealthy ways to meet our needs, but they meet our needs, so we do them. And when we can understand that that's a base intention for a lot of interactions, that people are just meeting needs, we can remove a lot of the shame and guilt around these things and start working and functioning on how to improve the relationship of meeting a need and what that can look like. And I think this is coming up for me today, all this understanding of trust and distrust, because especially when dealing with systems in place, because of what's happening with our political systems in this country right now. See, I don't ascribe to a notion of separation. I think that there are connections. There is interconnectivity amongst all things. And so what's happening politically in this country, I think, is another plane of consciousness or understanding of what's happening emotionally, what's happening relationally, what's happening spiritually. I think there's ways that we will express on multiple levels what it is that we need and what we are not receiving. We aren't always that skilled at expressing our needs in a healthy way, and we're not often that skilled in receiving the things that we do need. So this leads to these dysfunctions that we have, and I think that there's no more clear dysfunction than we have in our political world. It seems to be a caricature at best of the microcosm, macrocosmic understanding of life. It's like we're watching a highly cartoonized version of our inner worlds playing out. I picked up my sons this morning. They took a trip down to visit for the weekend from Portland. And, you know, Portland is heavy in the headlines, especially if you follow social media. You see a lot of people with a lot of strong opinions about Portland, most of whom don't live there and aren't on the ground there. So I asked them in the drive home, like, what's it like for you there? What is your perspective being in that place? And they laughed about it a little bit. And it's clear that we are not missing the realities that are at play when it comes to the seizing of control and all of this. But what was refreshing to hear was they were saying, look, and actually I want to rephrase that. I don't know if it was refreshing. What was fresh to hear, I want to say that. What was fresh to hear was a perspective of people who are living there on the ground each day and how it's affecting their lives. That's what I intend to say, because it's not actually refreshing. Some of it was quite alarming. There is an overall feeling that it's business as usual, it seems. That what is occurring is very concentrated and contained into a small area. So there can be this sense, I think, when that's occurring in our communities, when there's the bad neighborhood or the section of town that you don't go into, you only hear about on the news, that you can form this separation of yourself from it. I think it's a thing that we all do. And it's no more clear to me than when we talk about things like the unhoused community. This is a thing that people say, the homeless community. Well, no, this is not a separate community. these are members of our community who don't have homes, don't have houses, don't have addresses. But it's members of our community. These are our neighbors. These are our family members. And it's this capacity that we have to find enough space of division, just enough wiggle room there to drive a wedge between us and create them. Us, them. And that's happening right now in Portland. There's this 2-block radius where there are clashes occurring between people who are protesting the presence and the actions of these federal troops, the ICE agents from Customs and Border Patrol, and their actions in the streets, their harmful, violent actions. There are people who are standing up to protest that, and then there are people who are coming to protest them, and then there are troops being sent in, and then there are police being sent in to protect the people from the troops, and then there's more talk of more troops being sent in to protect Oregonians from outside troops. And there's all this ramping up and escalation, but it's all taking place in this small section. So most people of Portland get to move on with their day. Each of us get to move on with our day with a belief. If you're in Portland, there's a belief this is happening down there. If you're not in Portland, there's a belief that it's happening in Portland. If you're, and you see Portland as a whole, if you're maybe not in this country, there's a belief this is happening all over America. There's this way that we have of segmenting and compartmentalizing where these things are happening. But I think there is a deeper truth and reality that this is happening everywhere, inside of us all the time. This ability that we have to compartmentalize things that we prefer and things that we don't prefer about ourselves and about each other and about all of these political ideals. And we talk about even the environment as if it's this thing out there, save the Amazon. That's the environment. But here is just Cave Junction. We want to free Gaza, but nobody's talking about freeing us in this relationship right here, right now. Or people are. I don't want to say nobody is. People are talking about this, but it's not a very popular slogan. It doesn't fit on bumper stickers. But I think that there is a way to understand that we have to do all of this work. And that sounds exhausting, and that sounds overwhelming. So where do we begin? How do we begin with that work? Where do we end with that work? There are some who would say, it all is personal. You have to sit on your pillow and meditate and find peace and compassion and harmony, and then the world will heal. And then there are others who say, that's a waste of time. You're bowing out. You need to get into the streets and be standing on the corners. And there are those who say you need to write letters to Congress, and those who say you need to take up arms. And there are those who have all of these different methods, these different ways forward, that it can become paralyzing when you are unsure how to move forward with this. But I think that just like in our practice, taking that moment to pause, that stopping, that stopping is important. And I don't have a prescription for what that can look like, but I have a feeling that if we continue to think that these things are separate from who I am, I'm going to continue to suffer the worsening of the big lie. That big lie of separation. I'm going to continue to suffer that. It's going to get bigger, as lies do. There's a song we used to sing as children. There was an old lady who swallowed a fly. I don't know why she swallowed that fly. Perhaps she'll die. And then she swallows a spider, and then she swallows a bird, and then she swallows a cat, and all these things to get at that thing. And this whole song is a metaphorical teaching about lying. You tell the littlest lie, then you have to tell a bigger lie, and a bigger lie, and a bigger lie, and a bigger lie. And the lies just keep getting bigger and bigger. The story gets bigger and bigger. And later in life, we learn a whole nother lesson about that. When we start studying Germany, 1930s, we learn about Adolf Hitler and Joseph Goebbels, and we hear this famous phrase that actually is probably a misattribution if you really look at it, but we hear this famous phrase that if you make a lie big enough and tell it often enough, people will believe it. And that's supposed to be a lesson and a warning as well, teaching us that you have to be aware of our ability to be manipulated and our tendency to manipulate. It's the same story as the children's song. There was an old lady who swallowed a fly. There was an old man who told a big lie. And so I'm looking at this. I'm talking to Finn and Owen and hearing about what's happening in Portland, and then hearing perspectives from people who aren't there, and watching the clips of the congressional hearings and all of these things. And it seems that we're swallowing spiders to catch flies and swallowing birds to catch spiders, and everything is just escalating inside of us and outside of us and all around. There's this general feeling that most people are sharing right now that I speak to, that things are getting more intense, things are picking up. And so I was trying to find where I fit in that. On this drive this morning, I was thinking about that as I'm coming back in from town to come here to do this sit, and thinking about where do I fit in this? I don't want to be impotent to participate, and I don't want to think that I'm not already participating. I am already participating. You are already participating. Right now, with each breath, we are participating in this existence. Sharon Salzberg was telling a story about being stuck in traffic with her friend. They're stuck. Traffic is terrible. And she says, "Oh, this traffic is absolutely terrible." And then her friend says, "It occurs to me that we are also the traffic." We are traffic too. We're here. We're part of the terrible. It's this thing that we have been taught to exclude ourselves from, that we must question as the big lie, so that we can understand how this inherently includes me. Not in a way that says this is about me, this centers me, but this is also, I am also here. This is also a part of me. So I have a responsibility as well. And that's such a tender subject to get into when we consider the history of patriarchy and colonialism and racism and homophobia and transphobia and genocide and all of these ways in which The othering of ourselves and others, the creation of others, has led to the most drastic big lie of separation. You know, you swallow a cat to catch the bird, you swallow a dog to catch the cat. What are we swallowing right now to catch the last big lie that we've swallowed full and wholesale? What's the next thing we have to swallow? When are we eating the elephant? When are we just consuming the world to avoid coming back to the smallest truth? Because the bigger the lie, the less room there is for even the smallest of truths. I need to take a breath. So why am I talking about this? Why is this consuming my mind right now? Why is this more important than a spiritual practice? Because this is a spiritual practice. See, when Patanjali started off the Yoga Sutras by saying, and now there is yoga, he's saying now there is union. The word yoga comes from Sanskrit and Pali, and it means to yoke, to combine, to unify, to create union of, to connect these things. And in this case, we're talking about the connection through the breath of the body and the mind, through having awareness of the breath that I'm breathing in, thinking that I'm breathing in, witnessing and experiencing with the body sensation that I'm breathing in, and actually doing the act of breathing in. Now there's union. Now to think that I am breathing out, and to witness that I am breathing out, and to experience with the sensation of the body that I'm breathing out, and to breathe out. There's union. So now I'm sitting at the table with my body, my mind, my sensations. My thoughts are there. My emotions are starting to settle. And I can hear the quieter voices in my body, things I'm holding on to as I release them. And the Latin word for breath is spiritus, so the spirit is there. So now there is union. Now there is no place to hide. There is no place that I am not in this moment. Which means there are no others in this moment. There's a oneness. But the moment that we begin to swallow that fly of separation, then we have to keep going and keep going and keep going. You bring a knife, I'll bring a gun. I'm reminded of the lyrics from a Bright Eyes song where there's kids playing guns in the street, and one pointed his tree branch at me. So I put my hands up, said, enough is enough. Enough is enough. Let's get into the poetry of place today. We're going to be looking at Appalachian Elegy. I think the last one we read was number 33. It begins, tap dancing on tin roofs. Heavy rain falls, wetness spreading all over borders, refusing containment. Flash flood warning, sirens call, stay in, be still, guard your heart. Let rain be the only necessary movement. So let's see what's next. I think we're on number 34 today. Bell Hook's Appalachian Elegy. Poetry in place. In 34, the poet tells us, fierce winter cold, mind whispers, a lost landscape telling stories of how it was then, seated near fire, drinking homemade spirits, sake and brandy wine. Spirits bring contentment. For a time carry us closer to the sacred, moving through bitterness, our yearning to hold on to moments of ecstasy where we imagine we hear clearly destiny calling. I think I need to read that again, maybe 2 times, but let's see. Fierce winter cold, mind whispers. A lost landscape telling stories of how it was then, seated near fire, drinking homemade spirits, sake and brandy wine. Spirits bring contentment for a time, carry us closer to the sacred, moving through bitterness, our yearning to hold on to moments of ecstasy where we imagine we hear clearly destiny calling. So yesterday, I was looking for this book to read these poems, and I couldn't find it, so I've tried to find a poem by Wendell Berry to speak to the moment. But this is speaking to a lot of what I was talking about yesterday, and it still applies today. This nostalgia, this way of looking back. Fierce winter cold, mind whispers. You know, as we come into this season in the year, things are starting to get colder. Things are starting to close down. It's darker. We are coming into the nesting, the closing in part of the year. And you can kind of see where the poet is talking about here, sitting around the fire, drinking homemade spirits. In that phrase, drinking homemade spirits, I mean, she's talking about liquor of some sort, right? But also, drinking the homemade spirits is taking in the ghosts of who we are. Taking in the ghosts of who we are. You know, the homemade spirits. Spirits bring contentment for a time. You know, those old things, they bring us into this place of feeling full again. A time when we, looking back, think we were full then. Carry us closer to the sacred, moving through bitterness. Our yearning to hold on to moments of ecstasy where we imagine we hear clearly destiny calling. Gogo Bordello has a line that says, "There were never any good old days. They are today, they are tomorrow. It's a stupid thing we say, cursing tomorrow with sorrow." I just keep coming back to that children's song in my head. There was an old lady who swallowed a fly. And I don't know if I ever understood that song to be about a lie before. But that's how I understand it today. That's what came up for me is, oh yeah, once you swallow this lie, then you have to have a bigger lie, and a bigger lie, and a bigger lie. And then that Hitler popped into my mind from Mein Kampf, where he talks about the big lie. You know, that you have to make the lie big for it to be believable. And then I hear about all of these things that the administration is putting out into the world, these big lies, bigger and bigger all the time, requiring more and more violence, more and more armaments, more and more separation. There's this requirement that we keep separating more and more and more and more and more. That's the only way this violence will survive. That's the only way this violence will survive is through separating. So if we want this violence to end, we really have to start doing the deep personal work of remembering that there is no other. So there is no beginning there and ending in someplace else. There's just what is in front of us right now, right here. Breathing in and breathing out. Seated on my pillow, that's what's happening here. Standing in front of a riot cop, that's what's happening there. Breathing in and breathing out. Seated here in Cave Junction, that's what's happening here. Breathing in. Feeding children in refugee camps from Gaza, that's what's happening now. Breathing in, breathing out. We have to stay present with the knowledge that this is us. This does affect us, and we affect this. And how we do that, that's going to determine whether or not we keep feeding the old lady who swallowed the fly, or whether we are going to come into a truth. Are we going to keep separating, or are we going to starve that beast that requires our division? It's really up to us. It really is. I just don't know how to accommodate some things, and it's difficult. I don't know how to accommodate some people, and it's difficult. I don't know how to accommodate some ideas, and it's difficult. So I just need to breathe and keep breathing and keep doing difficult things until I'm strong enough to hold even that. But the idea that I have to do that in my head on my own is absolute insanity. We need each other. We need the presence of each other. We need the work of each other. We need to recognize that each of us are here and we are breathing and we are doing our very best. And then we can carry those heavier loads. So thanks for being here today. I'd love to engage with you in conversation about these topics and ideas, so please engage. And let's have a conversation, and let's extend these conversations into our families and into our neighborhoods and into our schools and our communities. Let's start talking about these things. Let's start talking about how we don't want to be separated anymore. We don't want to swallow any more lies to eat the last lie. We don't want that. We can't do it. It's not sustainable. Remember, every single iteration of that story, perhaps she'll die. Every single iteration. So thanks.